Okay, so this is the incipit page for St. Luke. Incipit means it begins. And this page actually has a ton of animal life, spiraled forms, and swirling vortexes. In many cases, the artist, who is Eadfrith, Eadfrith, his characteristic knots reveal themselves as snakes moving stealthily across the confines of the letter's boundaries. There's also blue pinwheeled shapes that rotate in repetitive circles, caught in the vortex of a large Q that forms Luke's opening sentence. Quinonium quonum multi conati sunt ordinare narratam. Yeah, I can't speak Latin, but translation is as many have taken it in hand and set forth in order. There's also birds throughout this. One of the knots enclosed in a tall rectangle on the far right and unravels into a blue heron's chest shaped, kind of like a large comma. Eadfrith repeats the shape vertically down the column, cleverly twisting the comma into a cat's forepaw at the bottom. The feline, who has just consumed the 8 birds that stretch vertically up from his head, presses off this appendage acrobatically, and it turns its body 90 degrees. It ends up staring at the words, oh goodness, renerationem, which is part of the phrase. Eadfrith has also added a host of tiny red dots that envelop the words except when they don't, and the letters NIAM of cronium are um, are composed of the vellum itself. So there's negative space now reasserting itself with the 4 letters. Let's see. So there's numerous Celtic spiral ornaments, step patterns appear in a large O, and again that lower right corner has that naturalistic detail of a cat who's eating 8 birds. So this is the incipit page for Luke. We know it's Luke because up here it says Lucas. Okay, and then this is the portrait page for St. Luke. And I also included the portrait page for St. Matthew and the other two, St. John, and so the St. Luke, the portrait page is very much in contrast to the incipit page. On this page, Eadfrith sits a curly-haired, bearded evangelist on a red cushioned stool. There's an unornamented background. Luke holds a quill in his right hand above a tray supported by his legs. He wears a purple robe streaked with red, and one that we can easily imagine on a late 4th or 5th century Roman philosopher. So we're seeing some of the body underneath it. There's golden halos behind Luke's head, which indicates his divinity. And then above him is another there's another haloed body, which is a blue-winged calf, and its 2 eyes turn toward the viewer, but its body is in profile. And this is supposed to be the calf, and it clasps a green parallelogram between its 2 forelegs, which is a reference to the gospel that he's writing. And according to the historian Bede from a nearby monastery, the calf or ox symbolizes Christ's sacrifice on the cross. Bede assigns symbols for the 3 other evangelists as well, and so Eadfrith includes their respective portraits. So Matthew's is the man or the angel, suggesting the human aspect of Christ. Mark is the lion, symbolizing the triumph and divine Christ of the resurrection, and John is the eagle, referring to the second coming of Jesus. So those are the different gospels that are written right there. The identity of the calf is also acknowledged by the Latin phrase imago vituli, And Luke is identified by the Greek words using Latin character Hagios Lucas. And the bearded St. Luke gives weight to his authority, even though he appears to be a young man. And so he's obviously writing the Gospels in this page. And on the other page right here, St. Matthew's portrait page is treated a little bit differently. It's got a little bit more Roman influence, which is classical. The monastic library at Wearmouth Jarrow is where Lindisfarne is, and it had a collection of Roman books. And these Roman books provide an image for the monk decorating a version of the Bible around the same time as the Lindisfarne Gospel. So this image of them is restoring the sacred scriptures. So in this version, there's a three-dimensional form on a foreshortened bench and footstool, both drawn, and it's trying to use perspective. There's also depth on the bottom one with the cabinet shelf. And so the similarities of all four of these pages is the positioning of the authors. They all are in some kind of similar position. The difference is there's some blank background on St. Matthew's page. There's not a lot of three-dimensional modeling in the other pages. And also there's this sense of floating, like the feet aren't actually touching the stool for St. Luke. But if you looked at the St. Matthew one, you could see his feet actually touching the ground. Now for St. Matthew, another kind of random thing is there's this man peeking out from behind the curtain. And theory is that could either be Christ or Moses, but we know he's divine because he's got the halo on him too. So the reason why Matthew's page may be different from the others is that Wearmouth Jarrow would have wanted to emphasize its Roman connections, whereas Lindisfarne would want to emphasize the indigenous roots. And so that's why we're seeing a little bit of the differences between the pages for the Lindisfarne Gospels. And that's it for this illuminated manuscript.